Okay everyone, in this final video we have nearly created a full unified architecture, a full IoT architecture for a system that brings together an ESP32 with some sensors and an industrial PLC system with some sensor data, some readings. So if we kind of go back to some of the image of the discussion and the plan that we were going to have, we do have this ESP32 with some I/O sending data up onto IBM Watson and sending that on into Node-RED, and we're visualizing it. We also have the PLC connected to a local version of Node-RED using an OPC UA protocol, and then sending that data up to IBM Watson and then on to Node-RED on the cloud with another dashboard. And we have seen both sides of that pushing data up. Now what I want to do is I actually want to make one side influence the other. So technically I could push this push button and it would send the value up into the cloud and then send the value back down to the PLC, and the PLC would take action from that. So realistically, this system could be in some country, this system could be in another country, this will be sitting on the cloud, and once they're all connected to the internet, we could have one system controlling another. So we want to look at that, and then we also want to see how we can just add some dashboards to also influence the system, the PLC system. Okay, right, so what we've done is, well, on our ESP side of things, I have added in a push button, a simple push button, and I've also tied it to ground with a pull down resistor. Okay, that's important so you don't get any bounce on the push button, and if you look that up with any kind of Arduino and microcontroller type stuff, you will see that a lot. What I've also done is I've expanded out some of the topics. So instead of just publishing one message with temperature, I've gone ahead and I've just replicated it, and I'm going to do for status 2, I'm going to publish my humidity, and status 3, I'm going to publish the value of my push button. So really down in the code, all what you'll see is that I've extended out our publishing topic. So I did a payload for temperature, I did it again for humidity, and then I'm doing it again for the push button. Okay. Now the only thing I will say about a push button is I've used it. Where are we? I've used it. I've set what pin I'm putting in the interrupt, the push button, and I'm using a flag, and I'm using it as an interrupt. Okay, so push buttons are generally better used with interrupt service routines. Okay, if you look up some of that, you'll see a lot of information on it. But really what I'm saying is I'm saying this pin, I'm going to use it as an interrupt, and I declare that in my setup. Attach this interrupt pin when it goes high on the rising edge. We're going to run the interrupt service routine. Okay, and what it just means is your system isn't constantly checking is the button pressed. If you press the button, it will respond to it. So there's a thing called polling and interrupts that you can have a look up to see how to do that, but it should leave a cleaner system. But you got to be careful to use rising edges and use pull up or pull down resistors. So I've declared that, and I've also saying this is my interrupt service routine. You always try and keep this as short as possible. And all I'm saying is I'm going to put a variable equal to 1 if the button is pressed. I'm just going to print that to my serial plot, okay, on my serial monitor. So basically saying if a button is pressed, just go and set a flag to 1. Okay, that's all it's doing. And then what happens is, as my code loops around, okay, this is my main loop, and I will loop around, and previously we had it doing every 5 seconds or every 1 second, it would send the messages up, the readings up. And you might even delay this further to 10 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever. You don't have to publish so much data at once. But I've also put an OR condition to say, well, actually, if the button is pressed, I want to send that command immediately because I want it to take effect as soon as possible. So instead of just sending every 5 seconds, it's going to send every 5 seconds, or if the push button is pressed, we're going to send the readings. Because otherwise, if this was every 50 seconds and I push the button, I'd have to wait 50 seconds for it to be for the data to be sent. So this is just a flag to say that the button has been pressed, And then what we do is we go on ahead in, and it will write a payload with the new value of the push button, and it will publish it. Now once it's published, I immediately want to put that push button back to 0. There it is there. So I'm just saying, once we've published it, if we were equal to 1, put it back to 0, and write the new payload with the value of 0 in it. So that when we come back in, maybe after 5 seconds or whatever, it will be back to normal. So yeah, that's what I've gone with. That's some of the edits to the code, and I'm pushing that data on up to my cloud. So we'll see on our dashboard, these readings will be happening every 5 seconds. We should see them come in, and I've also got the status of my push button. Okay, I can actually see them come in there on Watson, and I can see if I push the push button, we should see the value come true. Oh, we're actually disconnected. Push button has been pressed. Okay, let's just refresh the web page. Double check that everything's okay. Yeah, we're connected. Lovely. Let's go recent events. Wait for this to come true. Yeah, so we're reading temperature, reading humidity. Could have had them all in the one status, but I've separated them out. Push the push button. There we go. We see it go to 1. If I want to visualize that in my dashboard, if we push it, we should see this go to 1 briefly and then back down to 0. Okay, so I've set that up. I can see my values here, and all I had to change, well, I had to edit my function in order to put in new messages for my push button and get the payload of those on my humidity, and then return those values out in an array so that we get them onto a dashboard, very similar to what we did with the PLC side of things. Okay, and in Watson I didn't have to change too much. I just have it coming in 3 separate statuses. Okay, so that's what my system is looking like now. Okay, that is being pushed up every 5 seconds or on the value of the push button if it's pressed. Now, what I want to do now is I also want to send data back down to the PLC to take effect from this push button. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do this in another video, but that just shows you initially how we set up the push button on the hardware side of things and the Arduino side of things, and how we're pushing that up. Okay, now we're going to see how we can take effect back down to the PLC.